Mr. Watson, Jimmy Watson, we got you here. You're not traveling or meeting or buying businesses. I got 30 minutes of your time. Thank you for doing this. Really excited to tell your SMU story. We kind of spoke before. I think this is going to be something really relevant to the SMU student base and kind of recent grad base. But before we get into your journey, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Thanks, Mitch. I am happy to be chatting with you finally, especially after seeing and watching so many of the videos. You've got great group that's come before me. I hope I live up to some of it. So my name is Jimmy Watson. I'm a managing director at a private investment firm here in Dallas called Clavis Capital Partners. I've been here for about 7.5 years. And I have a SMU MBA, class of 2019.
Awesome. Yeah, I think what's important with what we're doing with these stories is to tell not just our undergrads, not just our full-time MBAs, but executive MBAs, people who have put time in the classroom at different stages of their life. So, as we start to get to that, let's start kind of what got you to selecting SMU for grad school. You're from Dallas, went to high school right in town. You probably knew a lot about SMU, but you wanted to probably get out of the state or get out of the Metroplex a little bit. Tell us a little bit about where you did undergrad and kind of who you were as a college student in terms of long-term career or kind of that evolution while in school.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up and was in Richardson and moved down to Preston Hollow before it was Preston Hollow in the mid 90s. And used to go biking on the weekend through SMU's campus with my dad, and grew up going to a lot of SMU sporting events, frankly, because you could get a ticket to any sporting event back then. And so I always grew up being a pony fan. And when I graduated high school, I kind of thought I needed to leave Dallas, especially just for my own good, and leave Texas at that, and got to know a lot of good folks that recommended University of Arkansas, and had an amazing 4.5 years there. So, really, really good program. I actually went to Arkansas to be an engineer. My father is an engineer by education, and did a lot of engineering in his life, and thought it'd be a really good job opportunity for me out of school. I think I'm okay at math, but I learned I'm not very good at chemistry. So about the tail end of my freshman year, I pivoted over to business. But wanted to stay at Arkansas, met a bunch of really good people there, and they had a really, really good program not far from the DFW area. So if I ever wanted to come back to Dallas, that would be an easy transition there and back.
So you pivoted to business. What was your career journey? Probably staying maybe in Arkansas wasn't on the plans. Were you thinking of going to New York? Did you want to do that? Or was it always, hey, let's get back to Dallas and start the career in life?
Yes, great question. I started specializing in finance in the 2007, 2008 years, graduating in 2009. So having this idea of going to go up to New York or Chicago kind of fell apart. But was lucky enough, again, being from Dallas, so I was able to move back home, use kind of the local network, and ultimately got a great job with Raytheon.
Yep.
Working in the FP&A department. So getting to use finance kind of right off the bat. And that first job is where my SMU story sort of begins. So I'm coming from Arkansas, going into this engineering firm. Effectively, Raytheon's like a big engineering firm, right? And
Right.
I walk into, my cube mate is decked out in Brooks Brothers, and he'll laugh at this. And we get to know each other, and was a same year, but at SMU. You know them all. His name's John Doherty. So our story will come back to John later on, but he and I became very, very good, fast friends, and ended up that summer, 2010, getting to hang out with some of his local friends, and then it kind of just snowballed. We had another really good friend from SMU that was a Raytheon, a guy named David Calvert,
Yep.
and the three of us just became kind of thick as thieves. And that sort of snowballed into what was one of a key decision maker in me choosing SMU for my MBA.
No, I love that. What was the job like right out of school working for a big company like Raytheon? Was it kind of that secondary education you needed that then allowed you to kind of get a better understanding of the business world of where you might fit in?
Yeah, yes and no. For anyone, anyone from Raytheon, it's an amazing experience, right? You get to see really good process. You get to see best practices.
Right.
They have a whole philosophy around Raytheon Six Sigma, at least back then, where you're really working on how to make a better business. And they were really great about upward exposure, and that was super important to me in my first few years. What wasn't right for me at Raytheon was it's just a very kind of repeatable process, especially in the
Mhm.
finance where you're not an engineer and you're not innovating. You're doing a lot of monthly, quarterly, annual repetition, and it's kind of the core of FP&A across any business, which is great.
Right.
I looked a
Yeah.
ton around that. I started meeting a bunch of friends or having friends step into the consulting world. So ended up moving over to there's an SMU friend that was involved in the recruitment of me over to Ernst& Young. So I joined Ernst& Young's consulting group, did that for a couple years. Part of that, I had some SMU friends that I had networked with, among several others, Baylor and some other Arkansas friends and stuff. That got me plugged into some YPO groups, or
Yeah.
sorry, not YPO, young professional groups. Um, and so we're involved with some social groups around town and Salvation Army and some other things like that. And I wanted to spend more time in Dallas, not so much on the Monday to Thursday on the road travel thing like a lot of the big name consultant brands do and big four consultants do. And
Mhm.
I ended up interviewing. My first interview was with an SMU alum, and she sold me on joining Riveron, and it was pretty cool to get to know this whole like community M&A market. Plugged me in with ACG, and which has been a big part of kind of where I am in the community I'm in today. And I had a really good experience there. It was about 10 years or so ago, and got to met some cool clients, met some really cool people, and got to be even more plugged in into the Dallas ecosystem, if you will, just without traveling, is
Yeah.
getting to know a lot of our mutual friends through those years.
So was it not until really going into the consultant world of, a couple years at EY, then realizing the better fit is to be kind of in a more localized shop, but that was when that kind of M&A private equity world kind of consumed you and that really maybe an interest spark there?
Yeah, yeah. So there is a big inflection in what I wanted to do, joining and getting into and joining and spending my time at Riveron, really seeing the other side of the client world where you have investors and deals and the excitement in that. And one difference between consulting, which is relevant to private equity, that I didn't have in more of the corporate world was there was just everything's different. You have to be entrepreneurial. Every day is a different challenge. You're not really kind of going through all the repetition and things like that, and being here and realizing how much relationships can impact business, business development, having clients, interviewing people, getting to know those folks. Riveron was a really good source for that, and it got me introduced to Clavis. I got to know now my current colleague Patrick Hamner through kind of that a networking group. There was some SMU folks involved in that, I'm sure as well. And just kind of after 2 years at Riveron, going to work for one of my clients full time, getting to see, going back to the operational side of the kind of private equity investment
Yeah.
ecosystem. I got an opportunity to come join the Clavis team about 7.5 years ago, and it's been great. It's kind of everything I realized I didn't know about going all the way back to Arkansas, right? Private
Right.
equity and investment banking was kind of understood. We're, not really a core market for that program up there in Arkansas, but maybe it is today. But in 2009, it really wasn't.
Right.
And so it's been a really good transition kind of all the way through to where I am today.
So so kind of walking through that timeline, you kind of had the understanding of get that first job. It gave me the 3 years of foundational skill set, what in the language of finance that maybe you can't get if you don't put that time in. Then you kind of started to explore, okay, maybe consulting is a better fit. Bigger consulting firm. I like it. I like the deal activity, but I want to be somewhere where I can be a little more uh, maybe additive and maybe one does not travel. But as you start to see more and more deals from the client side, they're buying businesses. How did you think about transitioning in, right? You mentioned you went on site for a client. Is that when you said, okay, maybe going to grad school is going to help me break in? Or how did you think about? Because I think that's one of the topics we want to talk about. Everyone wants
Mhm.
to work in private equity. When I went to grad school, they asked, what does everyone want to do? 90% of the class raised their hands. I want to work in private equity. It's not, it's a pretty hard, you know, I'll let you kind of say it on how hard it is to get in because you're more qualified, but it definitely is a competitive world, right? How did you think about breaking into it, and what was your path to have that opportunity with Clavis?
Yeah, one of the big things I tried to do was as I started having private equity clients was stay in touch with them, get to know them. I actually talked to two of my longer term clients at Riveron still to this day.
Mhm,
We office near each other. I asked them for advice and kind of other things that are going on in my professional world. But it's a lot of networking and it's a lot of kind of putting yourself out there and interviewing. I interviewed for 4 or 5 private equity jobs before Patrick told me that Clavis was hiring,
mm,
and a lot of them were really like your experience. You'd be a good portfolio operator. You'd be great at our portfolio companies. One of the firms sort of transitioned to saying, you just be a good operating partner. Why don't we just kind of keep you on the bench? You can work as much as you want. We'll create a billable rate. But there's a lot of travel. Not saying I don't travel a lot today, but that's a different
mhm,
type of travel than what I was kind of looking to get into. And it didn't give me the deal ownership. It didn't give me the longevity of the company. It's one of my personal biggest challenges, and I think a lot of people in consulting can relate to this, is you get to know a business quickly. You sort of like
mhm,
the hopefully, and you come up with a plan for process improvement or strategy or something, and you have this great deck, and you put it on
yeah,
the deck, the CFO or CEO, and then if they don't renew your engagement, you're gone and you're off to learning about the next thing. And
right,
I really wanted some opportunities to execute on the strategy. I like these businesses that I get to know in diligence today. I like meeting the management teams. I like coming up with a plan and collaborating on what's the idea, where can we go, what can we actually do versus what's just a shiny object that sounds
yeah,
attractive for the short term. And then, building our team around it, putting stuff into place, and then leaning in where we actually can and doing work. It's one of the big things that I think sets Clavis apart from a lot of other private equity firms is our whole office or ex-operators, consultants, and people that genuinely want to go improve and build a business. No one out here that we have on our team are investment bankers, which it's fine. It's a great background for a lot of people. But one of the things that just differentiates us is we're all people that want to get in. We want to get into the weeds of the data. We want to get to know the teams and think about how do we make your business better and not backseat driving. I like to just refer to my team as we're the left hand man of whatever executive it is. We're not the right hand person. We're not in your day to day. We're there when and where you need us, and we can be just super helpful. Um, that's just something we didn't really have in consulting, or at least those weren't the opportunities that we really had. So
yeah,
getting
that sounds
in
incredible.
was great, right? It's what I
So,
was looking.
yeah, you have a few of these interviews, you're putting yourself out there. They're saying, "Hey, you've got all the prerequisite skills we need as an operating partner." But you're like, "No, that's I want the deal exposure." Is that where you said going to get my MBA is gonna help me do that? Or walk us through a little bit why you decided the MBA program, what MBA program, and then ultimately what was that experience like?
Yeah, perfect. So, one of the benefits of going on site to a client was I wasn't going to travel a ton, and I said, "Look, if I'm going to be here for 2 to 4 years, this is going to be a great opportunity to get my MBA done." So,
Mm,
I think it was fall of 16 or spring of 17, I started studying the GMATs,
mhm,
and I was thinking like, "All right, we're going to leave Dallas. We're going to go to a top 25 program if I
mhm,
could get it." And I started looking at that, and I ended up dating this girl, and we had gotten serious, and she decided she was going to move to Dallas. And I thought this would be a really bad relationship starter to then bring her to Dallas from DC and then again move somewhere else or have another long distance relationship. We ended up getting married. We're still married. We have 2 kids.
okay.
Love my life, great person. But it was a great decision not to leave. And so it
Yeah,
sort of narrowed my options a lot to a weekend program in Dallas, like UT's program or a TCU program or SMU. My dad had actually got an MBA from SMU, so it's always been in the back of my mind to get an MBA
mhm,
from SMU. And I was able to get into as a younger person in our cohort, get into their executive MBA program, which I
cool.
thought was great. The weekend program, it really helps kind of mid-level and executives in the professional world
Yeah,
who work Monday through Thursday and most Fridays. And then you kind of lose all your weekends for a couple years, but it's a good way from my perspective. I did have weekday travel. The professional program could have been hard with a lot of that and night classes. And I wanted to meet some people that were older than me that I could look up to and ask a lot of questions. How did you guys go through your professional development? Kind of look for almost like mentors in my own cohort.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it worked out really well. There's probably 8 or 10 of them that I still keep in touch with. I graduated the program 6 years ago now, and we still keep in touch. I can still ask them questions. It's been really good and really good for me. And the EMBA is a little bit different than the rest of the MBA programs, right? It's part of the executive education program. Um, but it still involves a lot of the SMU Business School. You get a decent amount of professor overlap, but they do teach it at a little bit different kind of pace and a different depth. So pros and cons into that. They don't go super deep in my mind in the accounting and finance, but that's kind of okay. That's what I didn't need. But they go
Right.
really deep in incentives and organizational behavior and negotiations and some other stuff like that, which are actually more critical as I was taking that inflection in my own career from being what I kind of call the doer, right? I'm in the Excel, I'm going through and creating the
Mhm.
PowerPoint,
Mhm.
that stuff, to becoming more of the manager, if you will, and trying to think more strategically about incentive structures, organizational design, who's reporting to who, and then the broader, kind of strategic planning process. It was a lot better, that program, kind of geared toward where I was going to go in my career, the following couple of years, rather than just knowing my, let's say, debits and credits if we get too far into the accounting. But it worked out. It was a great program for me, great program for where I was in my life. Again, really great for my relationship with my now wife, so that we weren't, moving around the country or anything like that. And then it also just, it gives you the same network effectively
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I think a lot of your MBA programs. We got to merge a little bit. Got some great time with Kevin Knox throughout the program and Shane Goodwin, and a lot of the folks who are there and still leading the program and leading a lot of the business school initiatives.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you touched on that. I think you might be one of the first executive MBA folks we've interviewed, knowing you're giving your weekends up, right? You're working, but like it's kind of twofold. You sign up for that program, and I think it's one of SMU's more well-known executive program for what it is. It's able to get people who obviously are accomplished in their careers, have their undergrad or even graduate or master's degree, pull into this. What was that room like? Were you the only 30-year-old in there and everyone else is between 40, 50, 60? What age are we talking about? And then are people all, are some people CEOs, some people are owners of businesses? Like, I imagine the network and their experiences talking through this is just as valuable as the coursework, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple dynamics that this program has that I don't think the professional or the full time necessarily
Mhm.
have. To your point, in that more people are further in their career. It was cool. We had a number of great people that were at like large local CPG companies. We had a bunch of entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs, and a bunch of business owners. Some very successful, had sold their
Yeah.
company. Few of them were, older than 50, that still wanted a good education, still wanted to learn
Mhm.
some, maybe they wanted to do another chapter of their life.
Yeah.
There were about 5 or 6 of us, I think, that were still in our 20s, of a cohort of about 55 or 60. So
Yeah.
I wasn't the youngest, but there was
Perfect.
5 of us that were on the younger end. But we also had a bunch of military vets, which is really
Cool.
cool. We had some Army guys, Air Force guys. We had a Navy SEAL in our class, which is always great. Just learning and seeing their leadership. And when you go through a leadership class, this is the guy that has been in more of a corporate world. I just sort of sat back and said, like, defer to the people that led
Mhm.
large numbers of
Mhm.
people in challenging environments. It added a little bit more dynamic than I think I would have appreciated in kind of lower middle management or middle managers, in a different cohort. And, you also did have some incredibly successful folks. I think the person that got the posts and quants in our class is off running a senior leadership role at a very large insurance
Yeah.
company in the East right now. Yeah, and it's been great following people's paths too, right? A lot of people use the program to pivot,
Yep.
but a lot of people got promotions or got to become entrepreneurials out of it. It was very, very interesting dynamic we had with just the diversity in our class.
So you're on site for a client. You knew you had this availability and time, and obviously personal things allowed this to all kind of work together. Getting your executive MBA, you're still wanting to break more into the deal side of private equity. what was that ultimate? I think you mentioned second year maybe during this program, you were able to go to Clavis. What clicked? What allowed that opportunity to happen, and knew that you were ready and a good fit for that role?
Yeah, I that's a great question. I think it's very reflective of my GPA. Starting with Clavis in the summer of 18, GPA took a noticeable dip as I went from a no travel job that was pretty cush to getting to jump right into the thick of things with Todd and Patrick. And again, I joined because Todd has this great background. He's an operator. He's an executive at a company. He's done business development, consulting before, and he's very much a roll up your sleeves kind of culture guy, and that's what I wanted to go get into, right? And so he really sold me, and Patrick has sold me on what Clavis does, and it's been an incredible experience for it. Luckily, I'd gotten to know them the year prior through networking and kind of a soft interview before, and so
Mhm.
when they had a new platform that had closed and new investment they'd made, they needed a third person to join, and it kind of worked out. The portfolio company I was at was actually selling. Sun Capital Partners was the PE sponsor. They had sold it to Huntsman in April-ish, I think, of 18. So I was going to likely look for a new gig anyway.
Mm.
That's really worked great for both of us. I joined them in June and we were kind of off to the races. I was on a plane almost every week immediately after that. So my homework and test prep kind of diminished a little bit. I think I was overconfident in my ability to cram.
Yeah.
But it became a really good transition and one that I was hoping to make, but it just the timing worked out great. I think one of the big things that Todd was appreciative of was that I was in an MBA program, A, that I wouldn't have to leave him in a few years to go do it, but also that I was going to get a lot of this experience and I was going to be local and not
Mm.
traveling for my program too. And the network that came with it was great too, right? It was, I think we'll get into a lot of that, but I get to run into SMU people in some
Yeah.
1911 events all the time that are in my industry. And it's been really interesting to see a lot of people that I knew in my 20s that have kind of found their way into our ecosystem today.
Yeah. What was that first role? Was it, "Hey, Jimmy, we need you to wear a lot of hats. You're a smart guy. You said you're a doer, roll your sleeves up," or what's been the progression of your role at Clavis over these last 7 years?
Probably all that, but smart guy, maybe. So we had a portfolio company in Miami that just I think they had a CFO that was having a health issue and they just needed someone to go and help him out quite a bit. And so starting week 2 or week 3 with Clavis, I jumped on a plane every week, I think that summer, went to Miami to go work on the business over there. And just, it was one of those where being a consultant was really helpful. We kind
Mm.
of knew a problem or a challenge that we were working on. And it was at that time just reporting and just needed bandwidth and support there. And ended up more of because you're a consultant, you know what to look for, figure out what else is out there. Where there's cultural problems with individuals that, maybe thought they were overstepping their role or things like that. And it was easy to identify that by being the proverbial boots on the ground type of thing and just understanding other things like by being in the data, by working with the company, looking at how is our margin on this product? How is our margin with this customer? How is our backlog? How, are people paying on time? And a lot of the finance and FP&A things that came from my skill set became super applicable right away. But it's the consultant mindset of you kind of get dropped in and it's up to you to go figure stuff out. In the consulting world, you get benefits and you get praise for extending your engagement, right? Continuing to sell
Yeah.
and sell. Well, I wasn't really selling. I didn't get, there's no reward to it, but I was continuing to look for problems, continuing to start thinking, how can we make this better? How do we think about the recruitment of the team or supporting what kind of individual
Mhm.
skill set do we need to support the function that I'm sort of, filling right now so that I don't have to do that. And then that rolled directly into a lot more of the business development for starting to understand and evaluate deals. And, uh, had a really good community here in town, a couple SMU grads, Pierce Edwards, Will Fletcher, and
Mhm.
John Doherty comes back into the picture. Now he's in investment banking.
Right.
And so had a lot of really good SMU alums that I could talk to at different events, happy hours, boulevards, and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of on the job mentoring and on the job coaching from Todd and Patrick and then some other friends to really understand, what is our thesis as Clavis? What are we looking for? What do we view are attractive criteria in a new investment? And then how does that roll into a true thesis that we can go raise money around and that we believe in? And it was, that's sort of where I started picking up the business development hat. the business development hat for us as a deal by deal funded financial sponsor, it kind of has two parts too. So you asked how many hats do I wear? I wear a lot. In fact, my wife makes fun of me because I have a hat rack. They're all real and proverbial hats that I wear all the time. A lot of it, is is back to the execution of the company, but looking for new investments for Clavis. And then, like I said, as a deal by deal professional, I've also got to build relationships with capital partners. So a lot of SBIC funds, lenders, credit funds, but also from, the equity side, small family offices, local family offices, institutional groups, and then just some other funds that are dedicated to the independent sponsor world. There's,
Hmm.
Collaborate and Ocean Avenue and a bunch of other really good ones, but they need to know who you are before they want to invest, right? In the
Yeah,
same way that anybody invests in any form of manager, you need to underwrite your manager. And so you're pitching both ways, right? You got to be great as a financial
yeah,
manager to these investors, but you've also got to be cultural and you've got to mellow it out and, dress down a little bit so the management team and the company you're looking at doesn't make you feel so stiff and, stuffy. Gotta be
definitely.
relatable.
So I think that kind of gets me to my next thing that we talked about. What are, as someone who's broken in and you've lived this world now for 7+ years, what are some of the myths about private equity that those people considering wanting to get into that industry maybe should think of? One that comes off the top of my head is the myth of you need to work in investment banking to get a job in private equity. What are some of maybe the other myths that you've noticed, or that you and your peers or your coworkers kind of discuss about the industry?
Yeah, I think a little bit of pedigree is one of them. And look, our office are all sort of Southwest Conference folks,
Hmm.
Baylor, A&M, Arkansas, and you don't need to have that Harvard, Stanford, especially when you're in the middle market. There's so many good firms, and really, it goes back to like a consultant quote that we always talk about, or a consultant thing. It's the airport test. You're going to be spending so much time with these people. If your flight's canceled, are you going to be okay at the airport dealing or hanging out with that person for hours upon?
Hmm.
And it's the same thing here, right? We're late nights, long weekends, lots of travel, complicated and challenging environments. Sometimes you're going to want to be able to work with these people, and you can find smart, driven, talented people at all kinds of schools and coming from all kinds of backgrounds, right? I
Hmm.
think the myth of pedigree is one of them, and the myth is also of investment banking is not necessary, and it's also not in some cases applicable for our culture and what we want. Investment banking's great. We'd love to have that sort of support, but what I need on a day-to-day basis is who can go help this CEO with a problem that might
Hmm.
be related or something not Excel related, right? I will say there are some baseline skills,
Yeah.
heavy involvement in Excel, the ability to tell a story in PowerPoint, attention to detail is a really big one. We're big on making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and all the formatting is right. It's you put your best foot forward, right? It's a competitive environment in all forms and fashions of that deal sourcing, fundraising, just being who we are. So you still need to have all that kind of buttoned up mentality. Um, but you can get to this spot all over. The other thing I think what you were getting at too, and we talked before we actually started here, was there's a lot of different roles in private equity.
Hmm.
It's a subset of saying I work in finance. Okay, cool. What does that mean, right? There's all kinds of roles in finance. There's a lot of specialties you can do. Business development is a great one. There's a lot of really, really talented people that are just business development folks. And I say just, they crush it. They do such a good job. I ask them for
Hmm.
questions, ask tips all the time. You have deal execution people that are underwriting, that know the legal, that know the insurance side of things. You have the more transactional minded folks that are on the legal docs, the credit docs, fundraising. You have post close integration. You have, and each one of these can be a separate hat, especially in bigger firms.
Right.
If you're an FP&A person, operations, kind of internal operating partner is great. And then you've got, some firms are really big. They have an investor relations person, a marketing person. So there's a whole variety of ways that you can get into private equity. You kind of need to think about what's the culture ethos of the firm you want to be at. How big
Hmm.
are they, right? A small firm, you're going to wear a lot of hats. So we're looking for more of a athlete. If you're
Hmm.
going to a big firm, and there's a lot of them here in town, a specialization might work even better.
That's awesome. No, thank you for summing that up. I think that this has all been amazing advice as we kind of come to our end here. Tell us a little bit more about where you've seen Clavis grow in the 7 years that you've been there, kind of the businesses you buy, so those listening can kind of understand that, and then also where do you hope to go in the near and maybe longer term future as a fund or as a firm? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we're investing in, and we have been investing in industrial businesses. So think distribution, manufacturing, a lot of the services businesses like maintenance, repair, overhaul, cleaning, environmental, a lot of those type of things. Size wise is mostly an EBITDA target for us, 4 million of EBITDA up to 30 million of EBITDA. And we've been very successful in the 20s of EBITDA. I think it's a niche that we're really good at. And part of it is we're only investing in founder-owned, multi-generational family or
Mhm.
entrepreneurial-run businesses. So we're the first institutional capital in a deal. I think that story and how we approach that resonates with all of our backgrounds. So we're here to help you. You've grown this
Yeah.
business. You need a partner or want a partner. You want to take some chips off the table. Let us walk with you for the next chapter or run with you for the next chapter. So that's been a really big piece for us. And it's been successful in the 12-ish years, I think, that Clavis has been around. We've
Mhm.
closed 20 investments, spending over $700 million of enterprise value over that time, which is a great number for us. We're really
Yeah.
excited about it. And I think to your point of where we're going to go, it's just kind of continuing to institutionalize its own process. We're building out a team. We went from 1 to 2 to 3. Now we have 5 folks. I think we'll have another person or two over the coming years, and just kind of continue to be what we like to think is a leader in the independent sponsor world. It's a lot of relationships we've fostered, and a lot of relationships that I think will be our advantage and our foundation going forward.
Yeah. To that point, I think SMU has a lot of, business family alumni, right? So kind of what's the story to those folks who are, either potentially might go into their family business, and what's maybe back to the myth thing, like why should they consider maybe that first time institutional, investor, and kind of what you've seen in your past be the benefit to those relationships?
Yeah, there's a lot of everybody needs to do their own family and wealth planning and business planning and everything like that. I think where we play in and what we've seen a lot of benefit is you may not have your son or daughter or, whatever the next generation that wants to take over that business. You may want to take some chips off the table so you can do something. Some people we've
Mhm.
seen, their entire wealth is in a business. They want to get more into philanthropy. They want to build more um, generational wealth for their kids and start planning for all of that. And that's entirely reasonable and frankly, probably why most people transact. You're also going through this huge wave of baby boomers who are now, 50 to 75 that have these businesses that have been working super hard and are now trying to think about that.
Mhm.
Finding someone who has an operational bend to them, in my mind, obviously biasly, is a really great first step too, because we're going to come in, we're going to work with you, we're collaborative, and not saying we're the only people that do this, but I think we're pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And we help set you up for the next one, right? We still want you to be involved in the business. We still want you to be a key decision maker. I mean, one of the key questions we always ask is if we weren't here, like for a big investment or buying a piece of equipment or negotiating a new contract, if we weren't here, what would you do? And very rarely does what ultimate result is significantly different than what they would have done anyway. Maybe
Right.
there's a little bit of risk changing. Maybe we're more risk adverse. Maybe we're going to take a little bit more risk with them because we can. And that's kind of how we want to talk about it. So having a partner get in there, we see it in the market all the time. Being able to have someone come in as an investor before you really want to walk away entirely just helps the transition a lot more. A lot of buyers aren't looking to see the flag waver and the CEO
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
retire the next day after they make some money. So it's a good first step in our mind.
Yeah. No, Jimmy, again, thank you for the time today. This has been extremely helpful to hear from someone who's walked in the shoes that I think a lot of our network and younger generation wants to learn about. We're thankful for you for your time and spending this and wearing the SMU colors, and we can't wait to have you at more events and connect with our alumni and share more that you've done already. So thank you, and excited to continue to watch your story.
I appreciate it, Mitch. I'm looking forward to hearing your story soon. I think you should turn the camera around and tell everybody about your own entrepreneurial history too. That'd be a good one. But I
Maybe
appreciate
one
it.
day. One day.
Fun.
See you, Jimmy. Thanks.
This episode of SMU Stories is made possible by our incredible sponsors, Security National Bank, Hilltop Property Tax, SMU Cox School of Business, Mignon Steakhouse, and Sound of a Rose podcast.